Welcome to the Board Game Design Lab Tutorial Series, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. I will be your host, Chris Perea. In this series, we'll give you, the designers, the tools and information you need to get your ideas from concept into digital prototype and more. In this episode, we will download and install Inkscape. I will give you a short introduction into Inkscape. Then, we're going to jump right in and design your first digital game piece and import it into Tabletop Simulator to start bringing your game to life in the digital space. Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to do is download Inkscape. So let's go ahead and open up our internet browser. And we're going to navigate right on over to Inkscape.org, and it'll bring us to the Inkscape homepage. Now in this banner here, you'll see the green download button on the right hand side. We're going to go ahead and click that. Now right below that banner, we're going to click on the Windows download. And it'll ask us, do you want 32-bit, 64-bit, or the Windows 10 S App Store? I'm going to assume that you have a 64-bit system. If you don't, go ahead and download 32-bit. I'm going to download the 64-bit. It'll ask you, do you want an EXE, MSI, or binary? Go ahead and just do the EXE. And in a few seconds, it'll download Inkscape down here at the bottom left. So once that downloads, go ahead and install it. I'm not going to walk you through the exact install phase. You're going to go ahead and open it when it's going to ask you if it's safe. Go ahead and hit yes. Go through the install phase and get it installed. Now, once you have Inkscape installed, let's go ahead and run it for the first time. Now, when you open Inkscape, you'll have a view extremely similar to this one. Should be exactly the same. I don't think I've changed anything from my view from the default. So, let's go over a few things here. This is a vector editing program. Now, what a vector is it's an image, but the way the image is made, you can scale it up as big as you want without losing any image data or clarity. If you were to use other programs, like Paint or Photoshop or something, if you zoom into an image, you'll eventually see the pixels of the image. And it'll start getting blurry, and it won't look that good. With this, you can zoom in or make things as large or as small as you need without losing any of that data. So, without going into too much about the program, too many tutorials, there's plenty of tutorials online about how to use Inkscape, how to make a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to go over the entirety of Inkscape in this series. What I am going to do is show you the exact tools I used to make the pieces that I made for Realm of Error hacks to get them into Tabletop Simulator. A little bit further than that, if you want to do some research, go ahead and Google it. There's plenty of videos out there to learn how to dive even deeper into Inkscape. So, the first thing we're going to do is this square here is kind of like your page document working space. You don't have to keep that in mind. Right now, I think it's set to a letter size. So I kind of like to use this just as a reference to keep everything, nice and organized sometimes. The times that this doesn't work is when you're making your game board. That's going to be much bigger than an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So I'm going to hold down Control and mouse wheel in and zoom in just a little bit. Now that's a little bit bigger. I'm going to go over here to the circle tool, this little pink circle right here. And I'm going to go ahead and just drag out a circle. Now if you hold down Control while you're dragging this, you'll make a perfectly round circle. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, make it about that big. Now, we want to make the outside of this circle, what it's called in this program is the stroke of the circle, much wider. So we have a border that we can see and it's nice and clear. So up at the top right here, under the Fill and Stroke menu, now if you don't see this, you can hit Shift Control F and it'll bring up the Stroke and Fill menu. So in this menu, we're going to go ahead and go over to Stroke Style. And the width of the stroke, we're going to increase that up to, let's say about 7 or so. You can just click in that box and use your mouse wheel to scroll up and down. Let's see, I'm going to do about 6 millimeters. So if you wanted to change the color of the stroke, you can do that here in the RGB menu. You can change it to whatever color you like. I'm going to go ahead and stick with black right now. And then I'm going to go over here to the Fill tab under the Fill and Stroke menu. And right now it doesn't have any paint in it. It's completely empty. I'm going to go ahead and click Solid Flat Color Fill. And in this menu you can choose what color you'd like to fill it with. So I'm going to pick a color that I like. I'm going to go with a nice red. I think that's pretty good. And so now we have our circle. So if you click this arrow button here at the left side, the Select and Transform Objects, you can click on this, and you can further transform this circle. If you already made it and you're like, man, it needs to be more of an oval, you can drag it out like this with the Transform tool tips here. I'm going to go ahead and undo that with Control Z. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the size of this circle to be 1.5 inches, the same size as the tokens that I have in VeriHacks, and the same size tokens that we printed in real life for the poker size tokens that we used in our prototype. So this will do two things. It will keep everything uniform in Tabletop Simulator, and it will give you the ability to print these without having to re-edit anything. Like if you make something this big, if you look, this is a standard size piece of paper. And if you design something that looks awesome, but it's this big on the paper, if you go to print it, that's going to be a, 4-inch circle or something. So we're going to change the size down to 1.5 inches, which is the poker size chip size. So if you got your transform tool selected and you click on your circle, now up here at the top, you can see the coordinates, the X and Y coordinates, and you can see the width and height. So I'm going to change this over to inches, and you can see that it's 4.076 inches circular. I'm going to just change that down to 1.5. And then the height, 1.5. Now we got a 1.5 inch circle. So much further in the series, I'm going to show you some tips that I use to print out my prototypes from the design files that I used in Tabletop Simulator. Once I got them where I liked them in Tabletop, I went ahead and printed them. What I like to do is just keep everything organized. Put this at the top left. You can see that with this, you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 circles maybe across the top of a page. And when you print it, it'll come out and it'll be the exact size that you need to be able to use some poker chips for these guys. So now that we have that, I'm going to hold Control and zoom in again on our circle. Bring it up a little bit closer. Now all I'm going to do now is add some text to this and have it represent something. So I'm going to click the text tool, the big A here, and I'm going to drag a text box out here, make it a little bit bigger than what I need. And I'm just going to type BGDL. Simple. So I'm going to go ahead, and once you type out your text, it's probably going to look different than what I have. It's going to be a different size, stuff like that. So if you're in the text tool and you highlight the text, you can go up here and change the font to whatever you want. You can change the italic, bold, bold italic. I'm going to change mine to bold. And then you could change the font size as well. I'm going to go ahead and move mine up to like 32 maybe. And if you change the font size and it gets out of your circle, go ahead and go back to the Transform Objects tool and just move it back into the center somewhere. Now I'm going to go back to the text tool. I'm going to re-highlight the text I want to change. I'll go back up here and make this a little bit smaller. Then I'm going to go to transform. I'm going to move it somewhere near center. So that looks pretty cool. But I want to change the color of this text. I don't want it to be black. So I'm going to go back into the text tool, reselect my text, and over here you can change the fill of the text in the fill and stroke menu. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this all white. And then what I'm going to do is add a stroke to the text. So the stroke is just an outline, the outline of an object. You can add a stroke to almost anything in Inkscape. So I'm going to go ahead and add a stroke to this text. I'm going to make it a solid stroke. I want it to be black, and I want to make it a little bit smaller. Just about like that. So now, if we go back to the transform tool, we can see we got a 1.5 inch circle token. We got the filled in with red. We got the stroke style, nice thick wide stroke. And then I added some text to this. Now this text could be anything that you have. +1 token or color, you know, this is a farm, this is a worker, this is a whatever you need in your game, you can make it with this simple way. This is great for prototyping. It only takes a few minutes, you can get it uploaded, and you can test your game. You don't got to spend a lot of time on art and stuff. Once you get your components that you need, and they're the right components, then we can go in and start making the artwork and stuff for it. For now, we're just going to do the label, make a simple token with the color. So now, I always like to have my stuff nice and centered and straight and organized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to snap this to the center of this circle. And the way I'm going to do that is make sure I got my select tool, select and transform tool selected. I'm going to click on the text, and then I'm going to click on the circle while holding shift. So click on the text, hold shift, click on the circle in the background. And there is a align and distribute menu. Now you may not see this at first, but if you hit shift control A, it'll bring up the align and distribute menu. Now this thing's pretty cool because you can align things and snap things, put things in line, organize them to pixel perfect instead of just eyeballing it. So I use this all the time throughout the whole design process. I will keep bringing it up, keep showing you how to use it throughout this whole tutorial. So now that we got those selected, we're going to go over here to the align and distribute menu, and we're going to click this one that says center on vertical axis. So if we click that, you saw the text move just a little bit to the left. Now that is aligned perfectly center of the circle. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to align horizontal axis. And now that's perfectly centered in that circle. But let's say we wanted it on the left side. If you click this align left edges, it'll align the text to the very left edge of the circle. Now we're going to definitely dive deeper into this tool because it is a fantastic tool to keep everything organized, especially when we move into the printing aspect of your prototype, to get everything aligned and make sure it'll fit on the sheet and make it easier for when you cut stuff out to make your prototype as well. So now that we got our little token made, I'm just going to click and drag with my select tool, highlight all of it, and there's an export area toolbox over here. Now if you don't see this, hold down shift, control, and hit E. That'll bring up the export dialog. Now, I always make sure that you don't want to export the entire page. What that does is it'll export everything in this white box here as one full image. I don't want to do that. I just want to export what I have selected right now. So I'm going to hit selection and make sure that I have the things that I want exported selected. So what this is going to do is export it into an image file that we can import into Tabletop Simulator. So I'm going to go ahead and hit selection. I'm going to export as. I'm going to export it. And I'm going to name it. And now, when you export as, it doesn't save it. That's just telling Inkscape what you do want to save it as, and what you want to name it as, and where you want to save it. Now, to export it, you actually have to hit this green checkbox that says export. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that. It was really quick. Sometimes if it's a bigger file, it'll take a long time to load and convert it over. But I hit export, it exported it super quick. So I'm going to go back into where I saved that at. And there it is. That is our token exported. Now we're going to go ahead and open up Tabletop Simulator again and import this token into just a basic area. So go ahead and minimize all this. We're going to go back to Steam, go back to the library, click on Games, and then open Tabletop Simulator. Just play Tabletop Simulator, the regular version. Once this loads, we're going to go ahead and to create a single player. And we're going to go to this purple classic button, and we're going to go to custom. Now, when you click on custom, it'll ask you to import a deck and a board. We're going to ignore both of those right now because we don't want to do that. We're actually going to import a custom token. So, in order to do that, we're going to go up here to Objects, Components. We're going to go over here to Custom Token. And we're going to browse to that image that we are going to use, that we made. So I'm going to browse to that. And I'm going to just select local for now. We're going to set up a workshop mod for your tutorial a little bit later. And get it uploaded so you can actually save your iterations. This is just to show you how to get something into Tabletop Simulator. So I'm going to go ahead and do local. And this will ask you the thickness, the merge distance. If it's stackable, I always like to have them stackable, and hit import. There we go. So that is our token. Now, this token, if you do it as a token, you can see that the background is inverted, right? This is fine for testing purposes. If you want to import it and you don't have a different background, you're never going to flip over the tokens. They're always going to be face up. You can see that this token is huge, though. When you import to Tabletop Simulator, it's actually based off of the graphical dimensions, not the physical dimensions of it. Because you can imagine a regular little meeple like this is not going to be that small on an 1.5 inch token circle. So what we can do to adjust that is if we right click on this and go to scale, we can scale it up or we can scale it down. Let's go ahead and scale this down till it just about looks right. Yeah, probably a little bit down. A little bit lower. Okay. So, now you have your own token you can play with. And use. So go ahead and experiment. I know you guys have games you're designing and stuff that you need. Go ahead and make some of your own tokens. Go ahead and make them, get them exported and saved, and import them into Tabletop Simulator. Practice doing it, because we're going to do a lot of importing. Everything's going to be a separate image. Everything's going to be a separate piece or tool or custom object. And so go ahead and practice with that. In the next tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make your own game board start that process, and we're also going to make your own workshop upload onto the workshop so you can save all your progress, come back, reload it, upload it on the workshop so other people can see it, play it, test it, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notified of new uploads, and listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts at. Get in touch with the community over at our Facebook page, or talk with other designers in our Discord channel. All the links at boardgamedesignlab.com or in the description below.